LSU is looking to win their second consecutive matchup against Alabama. We all remember how this game played out last year at home in Death Valley. Jayden Daniels got a big touchdown run, which pretty much sent the game to overtime, and they pretty much went and won it with that game-winning two-point conversion. This year, though, Alabama, they're looking for blood. And I can't recall too many instances where Alabama has lost to the same team in back-to-back years. And you got to remember that winning on the road in Tuscaloosa is really hard to do. Not everybody goes on the road and beats Alabama when they're playing at home. You got to be a damn good team to beat Alabama. They've only lost at home a handful of times. And although you look back at that Texas game, you say, JT, our offense is just as good as Texas. You're right. You got Jayden Daniels, who I believe isn't getting talked about enough in the Heisman conversation. And it's really starting to irk me. Because if you watch LSU this year, like Jayden Daniels has been him. Against Ole Miss, he was doing everything he could to give LSU that win. Unfortunately, despite how good LSU's offense is with all the talent they have at wide receiver and the greatness of Jayden Daniels, they don't have a good defense. And it's funny how LSU, they like to pump their chest about how they're DBU, but this is one of the worst secondaries that LSU has ever had. And that's going to be the biggest deciding factor in determining if LSU can win this game. Alabama has a really good defense. All right, we know what Texas did to this Alabama defense, but it wasn't like Alabama's defense just got shredded by Texas. Alabama's offense was inefficient. And anytime you have a inefficient offense, it puts your defense on the field for more plays than what they should be. Alabama's offense, ever since that performance against Texas, this offense has performed at a way higher level than what it did back then in their loss to Longhorns. Jalen Milroe, he still is inconsistent. He can be shaky at times, but at least he has the ability to hit big plays downfield. And a big question about Alabama coming into this season was how much production were they going to get out of their wide receivers. Jermaine Burton was a major disappointment last season. We knew how talented he was, but we didn't know if he was going to be able to put it all together. Well, he's done that up to this point this season. He's been their number one wide receiver. And then you also have another wide receiver who's starting to make a name for himself in Isaiah Bond. So your wide receiver position, you now have two wide receivers who you can trust to keep drives alive. And Jalen Milroe, just with his athleticism alone, makes him a quarterback that you can't overlook. Jalen Milroe doesn't have to go 27 of 31 against you for 4 touchdowns and no picks. He's a guy who can complete 9 out of 18 passes and still lead Alabama to the win just because he can go for $100 and 2 touchdowns with how dynamic of an athlete he is. And LSU hasn't shown the ability not just to stop the run, but also the ability to generate a consistent pass rush. And Alabama's offensive line still hasn't been good this year, like it hasn't been for the past 3 seasons. But anytime you're going against a defense that can't get consistent pressure on a quarterback, it gives a guy like Jalen Milroe the potential to have a really big game. Yeah, you do have a cyborg and Harold Perkins who probably is going to have a really big task of trying to contain Jalen Milroe. But anytime you have a guy with this kind of athleticism and you don't have the ability to generate consistent pressure, a guy like Jalen Milroe, he can find those running lanes and he can gas you for a 40, 60-yard run. And Alabama also has gotten really good play out of their running backs. LSU's inability to really get too many big stops on defense has costed them a lot of games. It costed them against Florida State. It costed them against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin in that game, he was praying to God. He was stressing because there was no way he felt that LSU's offense wasn't going to be able to score in that defense. The fact that Ole Miss defense was able to get that stop and seal the victory for them had to be a big surprise to him. LSU offensively, the only way I think they can win this game is if they're able to hang 30 or more on Alabama's offense. Alabama, despite the struggles that they've had early in the season on offense, they've shown the ability that they can pick it up when they need be. If you go back and you watch their recent performance against Tennessee, they were down, 20-7 at halftime, and then they came back and scored 24 unanswered or 27 unanswered. I don't remember. I think it was either 24 or 27. This is one of the best defenses in college football. Statistically, they don't have a top 3 defense, but based on the eye test with my 2020 vision, I think Alabama's defense is top 3 in all of college football. And this is probably the best coaching job that Nick Saban has ever done. He's working with a quarterback that may not be all that great. Jalen Milroe probably wouldn't start on a handful of other teams in the SEC. LSU definitely has the quarterback advantage, but when you look at who is the more complete team, who's able to play complementary football, is Alabama. Now, they are a 3-point favorite for a reason. But the reason has to be that they know that this probably could be a barn burner. Because last year's game was a barn burner. Even with how good Alabama's defense is, their secondary has been prone to giving up big plays downfield. Okay, I definitely think that Kool-Aid McKinstry is their best cornerback, but outside of him, the other guys that they got at defensive back, they've given up a handful of big plays, even against Tennessee. You know, my guy, Joe Milton, he had success throwing the football against this Alabama secondary at times during the first half of this game. He was able to get a couple of big plays here and there. And also, Joe Milton also was able to do a little bit of damage with his legs to a degree. Jayden Daniels, I keep getting the two mixed up. It's crazy. But Jayden Daniels, with how dynamic of a quarterback he is, same thing when it comes to the argument with Jalen Milroe. It's just that Jayden Daniels is going to have to be able to improvise and make things happen against one of the best defenses in college football. Is he going to be able to do that? Is this offensive line going to allow him to have time to get the ball out to these wide receivers and generate those big plays down the field? You see, Alabama's defense is great, but the biggest knock that I have on this Crimson Tide defense is that their secondary gives up way too many big plays to my liking. And I definitely think that that's something that is definitely going to be a reason why LSU possibly could pull off this win despite being on the road in Tuscaloosa. I'm still going to go with the Tide to win, though, because LSU doesn't have a defense. If LSU just had a barely below average defense or even an average defense, I would pick them to win this game. But they have one of the worst defenses in all of college football. They're 84th in points per game. They can't get off the field in third down. They got one of the worst third down defenses in all of college football, and also one of the worst red zone defenses in all of college football. So you can't get off the field on third down. You can't stop teams from scoring touchdowns in the red zone. If you're an LSU fan, I know you're going to be really upset with this prediction, and you may feel like you got a good chance to 2-up Alabama, but you just don't have an all-around better team than what Alabama has. You got a better offense than Alabama, but overall, Alabama just is a more complete team. Texas was able to play a complete game against Bama because they had not just a great offense, but they also had a great defense. And I don't think that LSU's defense, with how bad they played, is going to give Alabama's offense any struggles. Tennessee's defense was really good against Alabama. Tennessee has, believe it or not, one of the best defenses in all of the SEC. You may not believe that, but if you go and you check the statistics and watch how Tennessee's defense has played this year, they've been really physical. They've been able to get after you up front. You got to be able to get after Alabama. If you can't beat Alabama in the trenches, you're not going to be able to win. Texas had big boys in the trenches that could push Alabama around and take advantage of that lackluster offensive line. I don't think LSU is going to be able to do that. I think that Alabama, with how good this defense has been, the fact that they were able to shut down Ole Miss offense, Ole Miss has been hanging 30, 40 points on people with ease. But when they played Alabama, they only put up 10 points. That was Ole Miss's worst performance on offense this whole entire season when they went against this Alabama defense. Alabama didn't allow Tennessee to score a single second half point when they played. And even though Tennessee's offense this season hasn't been anything close to what it was last year, they still got a really explosive offense. I just think with Alabama being the more well-rounded team, I think that's the reason why they win this game. And I know it's hard to continue to pick Alabama to win games against, teams that have explosive offenses because their offense at times can be a little lethargic, but it's good enough to get the job done. And you know that your defense can come and get big stops for you. So give me the Tide to win this game. 31-20 is my final score prediction for this matchup.